Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at a really interesting blog post. It's called Genius by Larry Dean.
Right, from the Einganeer's line.
Yeah,
It's all about his experience working with this colleague, Dr. Richard Tan or Luntan.
exactly. And our mission really is to figure out what made this partnership tick. What
Yeah.
can we learn about collaboration, maybe even genius itself?
And how innovation sometimes pops up in, well, unexpected places.
So the source is this blog post, a reflection. Larry Dean, he's an engineer.
And what's striking right from the start is the contrast he paints. Dean, the practical engineer,
Uh-huh.
and Dr. Can, a theoretical physicist, PhD from LSU. Very different backgrounds.
Yeah, but they ended up on the same team, didn't they, in their company's Houston office?
That's right. And Dean sort of described his own role. He was focused on defining the problems.
In terms of like engineering constraints, variables,
Yeah.
all for their specific linear programming tech.
Exactly, their LP-based system.
Mm.
And they even had this proprietary programming language designed for engineers. Dean was setting the stage, you could say,
Okay. And Dr. Tan comes in.
from this totally different theoretical world. But Dean says he mastered their programming language really quickly.
Wow.
But here's the key bit. Tan didn't just use it. He felt compelled to rigorously prove the engineering solutions mathematically.
So not just making it work, but proving why it worked.
Precisely. He developed these equations, and apparently this often led them to see broader uses, even solutions to totally different problems they hadn't considered.
That's fascinating. It's like theory meeting practice in a really dynamic way.
But it wasn't always smooth sailing.
Right. Dean talks about communication challenges, something about Tan's accent, making things tricky sometimes.
Yeah, heavy Chinese accent. And these intense brain sessions that Dean emits could be, well, frustrating.
I can imagine misunderstandings, maybe talking past each other a bit.
Seems like it. But Tan's solution was pretty direct. Dean quotes him saying basically, well, I'll just do it.
Huh. Okay, so cut through the talk and just build the thing.
Kind of, yeah. And despite the communication friction, Dean says Tan would just deliver these incredible programming solutions. Results spoke volumes.
That leads to the trust aspect, doesn't it? Dean mentions the engineers. He calls them Scotties.
Hey, yeah, like Scotty from Star Trek, always worried about the engines. Initially skeptical, maybe?
Right. But over time, these same engineers developed like total faith in Tan, even if they didn't grasp how he did it.
If Tan said it was solid, they believed him. That's powerful trust, built purely on his track record.
Absolutely. Which makes you think, like, Dean wonders, why did a brilliant physicist join a relatively small computer company?
Dean speculates a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe communication difficulties elsewhere, or something about his origins we don't really know for sure.
But whatever the reason, it was a huge win for the company. And their clients, obviously.
No question.
Oh.
The impact was significant. Dean uses the phrase revolutionized refinery modeling. That's a big claim.
It is, and he connects it back, mentioning his own earlier work on modeling toxicity, something called adherent recursion, AR, building on DAR.
So Dean was already innovating in that space.
Yeah, seems like it, but Tan's input just amplified everything, took it to another level.
Beyond the technical stuff, though, you really feel the personal connection in the post.
Oh, definitely. The respect Dean had for him. He calls it a privilege, sharing thoughts with someone like Tan.
And then the sad part, learning Dr. Tan passed away fairly young, 62, heart failure.
Yeah, that really lands. It's a reminder, isn't it? Even, genius. Still human. Dean mentions his smoking habit, a common weakness.
Such a human element.
Yeah.
So let's try and distill this. What are the big takeaways for you listening?
I think one is definitely the power of diverse perspectives, theory and practice complementing each other.
Yeah, and that trust, earned through results, can overcome even significant communication hurdles. It's about delivery.
And maybe that real breakthroughs often come from these less obvious combinations of skills and people.
Right. So this story really makes you think, doesn't it, about partnerships in your own life or work. Where could different approaches, maybe ones that seem mismatched at first, actually lead somewhere revolutionary?
That's a great closing thought. And what kind of faith, maybe not blind faith, but faith based on proven outcomes, do we need to allow that kind of innovation to really take root? Something to chew on.
Those Scotties who always get overruled by the bosses who want to explore new worlds, no matter how many warnings of catastrophe they give them. An Einganeer's Tale, page 14. To model toxicity, I came up with a new kind of recursion that I called adherent recursion, AR. I called it adherent because it mathematically stuck to the EPA's screwy equations. Folks were still coming up with more things that could be done with DR and AR and how to do it all faster, but my work there was pretty much done. An Einganeer's Tale, pages 69 and 70. I've had the privilege of working with many very smart people during my career. But only one who I would classify as a true genius, my colleague and friend, Dr. Richard Lun, 10. Together we developed techniques that would revolutionize refinery modeling. Richard was a scientist with a doctorate in physics from Louisiana State University. I, a meager engineer who squeaked out a BS degree from a much less acclaimed school in Washington State. Yet, together we made a great team. For several years we were the Houston office of our company. I would describe solutions to various problems in terms of constraints, variables, and relationships, the factors at the heart of our technology, LP or linear programming. The proprietary programming language we worked in was developed by and for engineers, to provide solutions to problems using only these factors an engineer could readily understand and define in the field. To Richard, our special programming language was like child's play. He easily mastered it and would quickly write the code necessary to solve each problem. Afterwards, the scientist in him would take over. He could not accept a solution until it was proven through mathematics. So he would do the math, and develop the equations to show that what we had developed was indeed the solution. Once he was able to see solutions in equation form, he was able to extend them and apply them elsewhere to solve other problems. Richard had a heavy Chinese accent that sometimes made it difficult for him to get across his thoughts. We would often talk through problems by having these intense brain sessions that would leave me physically and mentally exhausted, and us both frustrated. Often, our sessions would end with neither of us really understanding what the other was saying. Richard's answer to this was often, "Well, I'll just do it." A few days later, he would present me with a programming miracle. Eventually, Scotties like me, with that natural engineering skepticism, and many others, developed a kind of faith in him. If Richard said it was right, you believed him, regardless of whether you understood what he was saying. I'm not sure why he agreed to come work for our small computer company. Perhaps his communication skills and Chinese origins limited his opportunities. But our company and clients were fortunate that he had. And I am fortunate to have had a partner and friend to share thoughts with, that few others could understand. Sad fact, Richard passed away from heart failure, last Friday. He was 62. Richard had one vice, cigarettes. Although he tried to give them up numerous times, I don't think he ever did. Even geniuses fall victim to the weaknesses of mortal man.